So next we have a really special and exciting speaker. I'll bring on first our co-founder, Deepak Raj, a great philanthropist in the state of New Jersey and the founder of Impact.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I'd like to add my thanks to Rich and to the four congressmen and women here today. It was just a fantastic discussion. Obviously, we are all focused on getting many more people elected, many more Indian Americans elected to public office. And our hope is that over the next 10 or 15 years, we'll have 10 to 15 congressmen and women in DC, or maybe even 15 to 20. So thank you for being torchbearers and showing us the way and being a role model for our young men and women. Thank you. Good afternoon. As Neil said, I'm Deepak Raj. I'm the co-founder of Impact along with Raj Goyal. We are just thrilled to welcome Maya Harris to our summit. Maya, as you know, is Kamala Harris's, Senator Harris's younger sister. She has been a close advisor to the senator in many capacities. She's a civil rights lawyer, an advocate, and a highly respected political analyst. In her prior life, I guess, she's also worked for Center for American Progress, the Ford Foundation, and ACLU. And I know that the Senator Harris, has said many times how blessed she is to have Maya's counsel over the years, officially and unofficially. So we are so proud of the strides the Harris sisters have made, and it is my honor to welcome Maya to the gathering today. She was incredibly busy, by the way, and moved things around to be here with us today, so we are totally grateful for it, Maya. Welcome, and please, everybody, join me in welcoming Maya Harris. Over to you, Maya.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Deepak, and for all the work that you do in our community. And it is my great pleasure to be here. I'm so glad that we can make this work. And thank you to all of you for being here at this very inspiring summit and for committing yourselves to make the impact that we need to have in November. As I said, I'm just very happy to be here to support the organization and the organization's work, but honestly, because the stakes in this election are higher than they have ever been. As Vice President Biden said at the Democratic National Convention, many of you may have seen over the summer, America is facing 4 crises that not only threaten our lives, but are threatening the very soul of our nation. There's a public health crisis, which has left over 200,000 of our fellow Americans dead, and more than 7 million people are sick. There's an economic crisis, which has left tens of millions out of work, lining up for hours at food banks and wondering where they're going to sleep if they can't make their rent. There's a climate crisis, which has ravaged our communities with record-breaking floods and fires. You're seeing what's happening on the West Coast with storms, with heat waves, with droughts. A crisis which we absolutely know will only keep growing if we don't take action. And there's an urgent moral crisis, which has left our nation reeling in anguish and in anger over systemic racism, which, as we know, is as old as America itself, but it continues to hold Americans back in new ways each and every day. And it's only been exacerbated and inflamed by the hate and the division and the racism that we're seeing coming from the current occupant of the White House. Now, I know that, so many of you know that Joe and Kamala have bold progressive plans to take on all of these crises. And I want to share some of them with you. But first, I want to talk about my big sister, about Kamala. Some of you know that back in 2003, when Kamala was running her very first campaign, when she ran for San Francisco District Attorney, I actually happened to be on the campaign trail too. Because Republicans had put forward an awful ballot initiative in California that would have banned the collection of racial data, which of course would have a profound negative effect on communities of color across the board, for health, for education, for just across the board. It would have been terrible if they were able to ban the collection of racial data. And so I was working on the opposition campaign and traveling around the state of California, speaking to community groups and activists about how we were going to organize to defeat it. And at every event, after I would speak, people would come up to me and they would say, you really remind me of that sharp sister who's running for district attorney in San Francisco. Do you know her? And I would say, well, as a matter of fact, I do know that sharp sister, that sharp sister is actually my sharp sister. And in case you had any doubt, she actually is the older one. And so, well, all of us know who are sisters, as every sister knows. Sisterhood is a special bond. And when we were little, Mommy taught me the word for older sister in Tamil, akka. And as you know, that's a term of affection, a term of respect. Your akka is your protector, your guide, your teacher, your friend. Some days she's the reason you may wish you were an only child. Well, the thing about Kamala is that she took the job of akka very, very seriously. And growing up, anyone who was unwise enough to tease me soon learned that they'd have to answer to Kamala too. And believe me, that was enough to make anyone think twice. Now, sometimes it was embarrassing for me to have my older sister intervening in playground disputes, but now whenever anyone questions whether Kamala has the strength and has the conviction as a leader, I literally can only laugh, because I know from personal experience that Kamala has no problem telling people what to do, when to do it, and how to get it done. And I also know that they really ought to listen. And I think we all saw that on full display at the debate this week. And so when Kamala went to law school, she inspired me to do the same. And I ended up pursuing a career as a civil rights lawyer and an advocate. And as you know, Kamala became a prosecutor. And for the longest time, people would ask me, what is Thanksgiving dinner like at your house? With an ACLU lawyer at one end of the table and a district attorney at the other. But what I always told people was that for the scales of justice to balance, you must have integrity and you must have people with our values on both sides of the equation. And that's what Kamala has always brought to her public service, a sense of integrity and an ambition to serve all people, no matter who they are or where they came from. And it's that passion for the people, for equality and for fairness that's at the core of who Kamala is and who she has always been. And I mean that literally. When Kamala was a baby, her parents used to bring her along with them to civil rights protests strapped in her stroller. And baby Kamala, just like adult Kamala, was very quick on the uptake. You know how when kids pick up everything that they hear, especially when they're just learning to talk. Well, after one of these marches, Mommy asked Kamala, Kamala, what do you want? And without missing a beat, this tiny little voice piped up and said, feed 'em, Mommy, I want feed 'em. And so when I say that Kamala has always been like this, it is not an exaggeration. She has literally always been like this, practically from birth. And it's not hard to see where it comes from. Because when I look at how strong, how determined, how brilliant my big sister is, I see our mother, Shyamala Gopalan, in full and complete form. The two of us are literally our mother's daughters. I think some of you know that our mother was a breast cancer researcher whose discoveries helped pioneer new and better treatments for cancer patients. And like so many immigrants, like so many of your parents, your grandparents, and I'm sure like many of you, she came to this country with a real fire in her belly and an enduring belief in America's promise. And she passed that down to both of us. You know, I often tell people that our earliest lessons in life that we learned by example, not history lessons, like literally life lessons, were about equality and fairness and about justice and about the dignity of all people. And our mother taught us so many things. But among the responsibility and the duty that she instilled in us, she would often tell us that to whom much is given, much is expected. And if we ever came home complaining about anything, she would tell us, I don't want to hear that. Don't just sit around and complain. What are you going to do about it? Do something. And that's exactly what Kamala is doing. Joe and Kamala are running not just to get us back to some version of normalcy and competence, which of course they will, and which of course we need, but because they know that we can't just go back to how things were, how they were before COVID, how they were before Trump. They know that we need to be better than we were before, which is why they're always talking about building back better. And I can assure you, I can personally say that Kamala and Joe see people. They see their struggles, they care, they have compassion, and they actually have plans to move us forward. They know that it is absolutely past time that we had a level playing field for all of us. It's why they're talking about raising wages and creating millions of good jobs so that everyone can earn enough to afford a home and live with some basic peace of mind. They're going to restore the United States standing on the global stage to make sure that we're leading the fight against climate change instead of making it worse. And they're going to do it while creating millions of good paying jobs in clean energy at the same time. They'll protect American families whose lives have been upended, whether from the wildfires and storms that Trump insists will simply just go away, or from the virus that he has mismanaged from day one and willfully downplayed and ignored. I think we all know from personal experience, from what's happening in our communities, that we absolutely have to tackle this pandemic head on, which is why Joe and Kamala are going to ensure that testing and treatment and any eventual vaccines are free of charge for anyone who wants them, because it's what the American people need, and more importantly, it's what we deserve. It's what any actual caring leader would do. And would do it without any fanfare, would do it without any question, and that is what Kamala and Joe would do. And I think it's also important that they both know that there are no easy fixes to the moral crisis that we face. Kamala knows firsthand the sting of discrimination, of having to work twice as hard for half the recognition, of how far we still have to go to realize the promise of equal justice under law. And her name on this ticket, as exciting as it is, isn't just as historic in its own right. It's a sign of things to come. It was amazing to follow this illustrious panel that you had before us. And our mother, she would always tell us, you may be the first to do many things, but you too better make sure that you are not the last. Well, what I have seen is the way that so many little Black and brown girls have responded to Kamala, not just in this campaign, but every single time she's run for office. It's like she's become their Akka too, lighting a path forward for so many others to be able to follow. But that is only going to be possible if we show all of our children that fairness and integrity and honesty still matter, and that freedom is still worth fighting for. And so now, from now until Election Day, it is so important that we all do everything that we can to support this campaign, because none of us, and I mean none of us, wants to look back the day after the election and wonder if there was something more that we could have done, to wish that we'd sent one more email, made one more phone call, sent one more text message. It is so important that we all leave everything on the field right now, because there is simply too much at stake. And let's be clear about something. The South Asian community can play a decisive role in this election. There is so much power in our community. We literally have the potential to be the margin of victory in several key swing states to propel Kamala and Joe into office, because we cannot forget, in 2016, we came up just 10,000 votes short of winning the state of Michigan. Well, there are over 44,000 South Asian voters in the Great Lakes state who could change that outcome this time around. We lost Pennsylvania in 2016 by about 40,000 votes. Well, there are over 60,000 South Asian voters in Pennsylvania who could easily close that gap. And I could go through example after example of how, if we actually turned out in big numbers, we could help swing states all across the country, because we have electoral power. And yes, we can have a real impact. So I am asking each of you, I know in the prior panels, I think people have done so as well. Please go to iwillvote.com and make a plan to vote early. It's so easy and so convenient to vote early this year, and you can make a plan that's flexible to fit your schedule. And once you know how you're going to vote, make sure that your friends and your family have a plan too. And if you want to do even more in this campaign, text WIN, W-I-N, to 30330 to download our app so that we can stay in touch with you between now and Election Day and let you know how else you can actually help Joe and Kamala to bring this home. We can make history in this campaign. We can move our community and our country forward, but we have to turn out and we have to do everything that we can to help Joe and to help my sister, my Akka, our next and our first ever Madam Vice President, Kamala Harris. So I thank you all for being here. I thank you all for all that I hope you will do over these next 24 days. That's all we've got is 24 days. We can do anything for 24 days. So I urge you, let's do this. Let's get this done. Thank you for all that you all do. And thank you for allowing me to be here in my sister's stead today. Thank you.
Maya, thank you so much. What a thrill to hear you today. And I'm actually in Pennsylvania right now, so I'm on it, working on this. So just a personal note of privilege. I got to work under Maya's leadership in 2016 in the campaign. And I just want you to know what you've all heard today. She is a rock star change maker, just like her sister. And it was such a privilege to be inspired by you. You personally inspire me. So thank you. And we are fired up. We are ready to go. We're going to finish this and bring it home for you, Kamala and Joe. Thanks, Maya.